Welcome to WagerTalk's last call. Beautiful Sunday morning that feels just rather off. It's probably because they changed the clocks on us once again. And I didn't even know that was going to happen. Thank goodness I got the text from some of my friends. So we're here on time to hang out with all of you. Every single Saturday, we bring in a myriad of WagerTalk handicappers to answer your questions regarding all the sports for the day. So today we've got a nice NBA slate, a little bit of college basketball. We've got Yanni the Greek. You guys know him as VR Ace. He does the Steam Room here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We've got Ralph Michaels coming in to answer any of your college basketball questions and talk maybe some trends and angles for this last game of the regular season for some of these teams. And then Steve Merrill is going to come in hot, maybe get him some NBA takes, because I just got a text from Art DeCesar at the Westgate Superbook. It's a pretty light card today. There's not a lot to report from college basketball as far as sharp and square action. Let's bring in VR. Yesterday was an okay day, VR. I mentioned how bad and poorly Saturdays have been for me. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. But, man, did I miss some opportunities? Did I leave some games off my card? And, I live bet Arkansas here on the show when you said they got hit. What an awful push that was. So I was very frustrated there, and it kind of carried over. When you have something like that go your way, right? Or not go your way, right? If you had 1.5 with Marquette that closed 4.5, like my good friend Chris Thurston, how do you rebound from that? You know you made a good bet. You got the wrong result. Talk to me about the process, because I think a lot of people tend to chase. They tend to double down. They get emotional about these losses. What are your recommendations for people trying to, get over things quickly?
Listen, it's no secret. We make our worst decisions when we're emotional. Both when we're negatively emotional and positive emotional. Like when you're really high, you're running good, and you're like, I'm going to fire, I'm going to unload a bigger bet. So it could work both ways negatively. And it happened to me too with the UFC. It started like two of the worst decisions I've seen. One, probably they say in the worst last decade, the worst decisions with a plus 250 dog that I had a nice bet on. Here's what you got to do. This is what's worked for me, because I got to brush the same demons off everybody else does every single day. By already determining your bet size, you eliminate that problem. Meaning, you have your starting bankroll. You know the percentage of bet you should be making max. Let's say it's 1% of your bankroll, the most you're going to make. You have a $10,000 bankroll. You know I'm betting $100 a game. Once you establish that, no matter how hot of a run you are or how cold of a run you are, if you could stick to your own rules, that's not going to break you. That emotion's not going to break you. Then you just have to convince yourself that in the long term, if you've proven to yourself you have an edge, that those bad breaks are going to balance out. I almost feel like I put another check mark up. Now they owe me one. Now they owe me one. Now they owe me one. So when I get lucky, I don't feel lucky because I just got burned a week ago. So those tend to balance out. If you're going to bet long enough, they're going to balance out. We always remember, and it's funny, whenever I talk to a winning sports bettor, they remember their bad beats. That's what they remember more than their big wins. They always want to talk about their bad beats. Usually recreational bettors, they want to talk about their big wins, that parlay ticket they cashed, that big bet they cashed. So that's, I think, the big differentiator. If you're doing it for entertainment, it's hard to shake those off. It really is, because you're doing it emotionally. You're doing it as a fan. But if you're actually doing it as an investment vehicle, like we say, to turn a profit, then you have to establish those boundaries ahead of time. And it makes it easy for you. Like, I know what I'm going to bet today, the amount to bet, how much money I'm going to bet, regardless of whether I'm up in the account, down in the account, up this week, down this week. If you could eliminate that process from your decision-making, it will put you ahead. It's going to make your job so much easier. If you're calculating your bets every single day, how much I'm going to bet, I promise you're going to make the mistakes. It's happened to me. That took me the longest thing, Kel, to finally figure out. Like, I had good information, I had winning information, but until I started to use it correctly and not let those bad beats make me chase, make me bet more, make me change my bet size. Until I did that, I was never going to make a profit. You are never going to win doing anything but. So you just got to remind yourself, those will balance out. Unless it's the only day you're betting, then you're a product of bad luck. I feel sorry. That's awful. Don't bet again. But if you're going to bet tomorrow, next week, next month, I promise you've gotten lucky before. I promise you that you were on the other side of that. We were all on the other side of that. So you just got to shake it off, chalk it up. They owe me one, and on to the next bet. That's the best advice I can give. It's easier said than done. And it took me a while to even practice what I preach, because most bettors that are watching this right now, they know what to do. They're not on here this early in the morning by accident. I didn't even know they moved the time. So it's really like 7 a.m. out here. My alarm went off and I was up. Until I heard you, I didn't even know that it's the time change. But going back to that, those are the same things we always have to fight. And again, it's hard enough to win, but don't make it harder on yourself by chasing those demons. That's what I like to call it. Every day, start your day off, brush them off your shoulder. Tell yourself that I'm going to do the right thing. The cards are going to fall how they may, but I'm not going to beat myself. Don't beat yourself. That's the key, because more times than not, we end up beating ourselves. It's not even the market that beats us. There's a lot of guys out there that are specialists in college basketball right now that know who to bet, know what the numbers should be. I'm not talking guys that move the market. I'm talking guys that are watching this show right now. They've been following a whole season, have enough data, seen enough of these teams, and could actually find some good bets to make. Do that. Don't focus on the other side of it. And that's the money side, how to turn that into money by establishing your rules bright and early and sticking to them. And when you break them, then you know you did the wrong thing. And last but not least, this is what I'm going to say. And this is the best takeaway. You have to ask yourself this. And I ask myself the exact same question. And what I'm doing reflect that of a winning sports bettor. It's like I say, I don't look like the guy on the cover of Fitness magazine, right? Men's Fitness. Why? Because I don't have that discipline. I don't eat like the guy on the cover of that magazine. I don't exercise like the guy on that cover of that magazine. My lifestyle isn't like that guy on the cover of that magazine. So I do nothing where I deserve to look like that. Absolutely nothing. Same thing with sports betting. Are you chasing? Are you betting bad numbers? Are you over betting your edge? If you're doing any of those things, you don't deserve to be a winning sports bettor. So you got to ask yourself, do I deserve to be profitable? Am I doing the things that a professional sports bettor, a winning sports bettor does? If you could honestly answer that question, yes, shake it off and on to the next one. If you could be honest with yourself and no, then you got to correct, not repeat. And that was the process that took me a while. I would know what to do, but I would repeat the same mistakes. Eventually, I got to a point where I corrected rather than repeating. So I don't want to go long, but that's one of the most important takeaways. Picks are great. Winning sides are great. I want to share as much as possible. But if you don't execute correctly, it's not going to matter. Like with card counting, I'm going to teach the people how to do it. I will make you an edge versus the casino. But you got to go in there and fight those demons of getting that bad hand. You have a count of where you know you have a 3% edge on that hand. There's no way the house should beat you. You got a 20. He's got a 5 showing. He flips over 3, 3, 4, 4, 4 cards later, pull out a 21. And you know the odds of that happening were so minuscule. You got to be able to shake that off. And if the count drops, go back to a minimum bet. So maybe you're betting 100 to 1,000 and that was your $1,000 bet and you lost it on an improbable hand. Do you have the discipline to then back off and go back to $100 because that's what the count requires? Same thing with sports betting. That's why I say those that are my yearly guys, even if they're not going to play blackjack, come to the course because you're going to have so many takeaways you could carry over to sports betting. So I'm so glad you asked that question, Kel, because I woke up today having to fight the same things. I think I had an okay day. I lost in MMA. I hit my 5% play. I haven't even done all the math yet. But what could I do? Like they're going to, as long as I feel that I placed good bets, I know that's going to take care of itself in the long term. In the short term, none of us can control that. So stick to your guns, do the right thing, look at yourself and reflect that of a winning sports bettor, and you'll do just fine.
Always great advice from Yanni the Greek. You guys can get that every single Saturday and Sunday on the Steam Room VR. Today has a lighter card. Are you doing a Steam Room today after the show?
No. Like you said, it's a lower card. Going to do one into next week. And then, like I said, the following week, that Tuesday, we're putting out the first class for the blackjack course. So I'm really excited about that. And it'll be during the March Madness. So nothing better. We'll be able to combine the two. So yeah, it's a smaller card, but there's still some action on the board. I just bet Navy, just going to share that right now. Took Navy plus the 6, gave that out as a 4% play to my subscribers. I think it's down to 5.5 right now. Worth buying a half a point as long as you're not paying more than 121, I believe. That's still probably some 6s out there because I think the public's on the other side. Most of them haven't woke up yet to bet that game, I'm sure. But they'll be opposite Navy. We took the 6 on that game. That just came in. That's why I'm sharing it. But we're getting down. There's some action.
All right. Yeah, I've got the odds logic screen open. I do not know what the rotation number is there, but I will check it out. Maybe Bucknell. There it is. 5.5 or so. Yeah. No 5s left. We'll leave it at that. All right, let's get to Titan CT's question, and then I'll go over some of the stuff that Art. The Caesar text me. Rotation number 784, Rutgers versus Minnesota, 790 Tulane, UAB. Any thoughts on either one of these games, VR? Nothing on my end from Art to Caesar. He said they bet San Francisco -3.5, which is now up to 5 on the odds logic screen. James Madison +2.5. And he said the public is on Nebraska today. Another public dog is very interesting with this Nebraska team. Or I'm sorry, Nebraska, is a 7.5-point favorite against Iowa, up from 6.5. Even an 8 at Pinnacle.
For our boy CT, all one-sided. That's actually out of the early games other than Michigan State. And just to let it be known, I know we bet that game. We went over 146.5, 147 in that one in the early game. It's all one-sided. I don't have any information as far as sharp money on the Minnesota Rutgers game, but I'm actually pretty surprised to see this one-sided action on Rutgers. I'm talking 8 out of 10 tickets, 80+% of the money. They're also betting the game over. Neither of those have gotten any respect, as you could tell by the line move. So, if you like the Rutgers side, you're betting with everybody else, not being you're going to lose. But I see my sharper shops, and that's kind of a tell. They're at 5, and the square shops are at 5.5. So if that tells you anything, gun the head. I'm all over Minnesota. 790 Tulane. Let me see what I can share for my man. It's about 60-40, what you'd expect for a -3, 3.5 spread. Another side that I don't have a bet on from any of the groups that I work with. And then as far as the total goes, again, nothing really to share on the total. On the side, nothing, kind of what you'd expect. 3.5-point favorites. They usually get about 65% of the money anyway. This is a road favorite, so it should be a little bit little. But nothing really sticks out there. There is a little bit of a drop from the overnight where it was 4, then it went to 3.5, and some of the sharper shops are down to 3. So obviously, I think Tulane may be getting a little home love, but not no respect there. I think your opinion, CT, is probably better than mine on that game. But on the first one, I do like the Minnesota side. Everything on my screen flashes Minnesota.
Yep, I just found a rogue 5.5. I will take it. I had Minnesota on my list this morning. Like VR says, guys, come prepared. Bring your notes to the show. And if there's something that you say, hey, I really agree with this, or maybe it's a game we end up keeping you off of. I ended up, as I mentioned yesterday, I found an Arkansas -1 live during the show. Didn't get the result we wanted, but, there was an opportunity there. And then also Oklahoma +5 was a nice one. I'll take that as well. Okay. Bill Sandoval wants to know, Pepperdine has been playing good basketball, so then +15.5 is something to think about. VR, are you like me? Some of these teams way down on the list, I can't even name a player on. 819, 820. Pepperdine is playing Santa Clara. It's up to even 16 at some of the sharper shops, including the Westgate Superbook.
Pepperdine's getting the money, believe it or not, even from the recreational bettors. I'm looking at my sheet now from the stuff we bet. We haven't bet that game so far, but looking at the access that I have to books, they're betting the game. Pepperdine, they're taking the points with Pepperdine. Like the gentleman said, they're playing well. So it seems like that's the takeaway. That's what most think. It's a lot of points, but you're seeing the line move the other way. Like you said, I think it was the 14.5, 15 opener, now up to 16. The other thing that sticks out a lot about that game is the over. I'm seeing 100% of the money on the over, and yet the sharpest shops that I have access to that I respect the most are charging me -115 to go under 154.5. So that's one of those, kind of public versus Sharps situation, which I kind of can confirm, because every time it went to 55, you saw it got hit again. The overnight was like 56, went up to 57. That got dummied up. We talk about that all the time. It takes small limit bets to dummy a game up when they know they're going to come in on the other side. That happened last night. They got it up to 157. They started betting under 157 this morning. One of the movers that share stuff with me on this instant messaging board, he had Pepperdine. Their buy number was 155. That's why anytime 55 is out there, they're taking it off the board. And you saw that. It went down from 57, 56, 55, went to 54 and a half. Boom. Once they moved it back to 55, they took that again. And that's why you keep seeing 54 and a half. So it's more than enough public money probably on that over to balance that action by the time that game tips off. It's a later one. But I think the books are going to need Santa Clara. I think most of the recreational bettors are on Pepperdine. And if anything, it looks to me like the 14 and a half got laid last night to maybe get out ahead of the market. But I don't think so because, like I said, public's on Pepperdine. So it looks like Santa Clara was a true side at 14 and a half and under 155. So Santa Clara minus around 15 and under 155 seems to be the sharp sides in that game.
Awesome stuff. Mosey, last question for VR before we get him out of here. Wants to know if Michigan is a public dog. I'm not going to lie. Michigan State's on my long list, VR. There's now a 7 out there on the odds logic screen. It was pretty much painted 8. 7.5, 8 when I got up this morning. There's still a couple of 8s out there, but now Superbook is at 7. Circa's at 7. Pinnacle's at 7. Did somebody come in and hit Michigan?
And I don't see it. Here's what I could tell you, that it isn't public. Like they're not taking, Michigan isn't the public darling. In fact, that's the heaviest bet game already. Now it's an early game, but keep in mind, there's a handful of early games going off. Maybe not as high profile as Michigan State, but there's still a handful of early games. And that one by far, without a doubt, is getting the bulk of the betting action. And so far it's all Michigan State. I'm talking like a heavy Michigan State action. Michigan State on money line, tied in the parlays with later. Michigan State teased with other games later. Michigan State straight bets. And like you said, those 8s were taken out early from that 8.5 that it got up to. The overnight is like 6.5. So seems like someone got out ahead laying that Michigan State side, expecting public money to come in. That did happen, pushed it up to that 8. And that's where you started seeing some Michigan money from other groups, obviously. But they're not the public darling, that's for sure. The over seems to be the public darling in that game. And like I said, we bet that as well. So it seems like we're on the same side as the betting public. The only difference is we got in at 146.5, 147, and they're betting it over about 148 right now at some of the sharper shops. I still see 46.5 out there. So maybe the public isn't going over as it seems to one of the sheets that I'm looking at. You know, when you look at the whole country, it's going to change. This is more East Coast. They tend to be betting that game over. And like I said, Michigan isn't sticking out as a public dog.
Okay. Awesome stuff from VR. Anything you'd like to leave our audience with before we get you out of here?
Yeah, I'll fire a couple of the plays we got down on. Let me give you an NBA game we got down on. Denver, Oklahoma City. We went under 240, 40.5, and 241. In the Coastal Athletic Conference, we took the 8.5 and 8 on Hampton. In Patriot League semifinals, we laid the 1.5 on American, then the money line on American as well. Took Winthrop in the Big South Conference at +8. And I already gave you Navy +6. So I'll give you Southland Conference as well. Go under 139.5, 139, Incarnate Word and Southeast Louisiana. So those are bets that I have a percentage of. I take a percentage of the accounts. So I'm cheering them in. If you follow, if you fade, we gave you a better number because I'm sure some of those lines have moved.
They always move, VR. That's why literally during the show, I've got multiple browsers open. I've got an odd screen. I've got a couple of accounts, and I've got my cell phone ready in case I need to bet at some of the legal shops. You are the best. Yanni the Greek, at Greek_gambler on socials. Unless it's TikTok, then you got to add a 7 at the end. VR, we'll see you next weekend, of course, right here on Last Call. Get ready for March Madness. Ralph Michaels has been waiting in the wings. We're going to get some NBA questions, some college basketball questions from you guys, and we're going to get you some answers. Ralph, always looking super tan. I'm always jealous. He gets to spend more time at the pool than I do. Good morning, Ralph. What's going on this beautiful Sunday?
Hey, Cal. Well, let's get right to it. And I want to share something with it. And that's why I love watching this show. VR shares his information. If I have plays, I want to share them with you. We don't hold anything back. We're not saying, hey, come buy our best play and we're going to give you some other crap for free. So I want to just start this segment with this, Kelly. Let's think back to the NBA. We all know that NBA Game 7s fly under the total over 75%. Why? There's so much pressure. Well, I'm going to tell you this, Kel. Conference tournament championships are exactly the same thing. It doesn't get the publicity of a Game 7, but these smaller conferences, listen, if you're in the SEC or Big Ten and you lose your conference championship, it's not a bubble burst. You're still going to the NCAAs. But if you're any of those other non-top 5 conferences and you lose your conference game, you're sweating it out. So, Kel, I went through going all the way back to 2012. If you bet every neutral conference final game under the total, you have gone 165 and 115. That is 59% just blindly betting that system. I did play all 3 neutral conference tournament games under the total. The Summit League, St. Thomas and Nebraska Omaha, the Big South with Winthrop and High Point, and the Missouri Valley with Bradley and Duke. Take that with you all the way into next week. Conference championship finals under 59% since 2012, and not one season since 2012 have the over-unders finished over 50%. The worst year the system ever had was exactly 50%. So all you did at worst was lost juice.
Interesting. I like that trend this morning because these are not conferences that I generally follow, Ralph, until about this time of the year, because now they're on TV. You don't have to go searching for it or use a elusive website to find a game. They're there and they're available. All right, let's see if we have some questions from the chat. Clint Farrar, 811-812, Arkansas State, South Alabama. Arkansas State is 0-2 straight up versus South Alabama this season, but now is favored by more than 2 possessions. Let me pull up my odds logic screen. Currently, Arkansas State up to 5.5 at FanDuel. That is the highest one on the board. There is still some 4.5s at a couple of offshores and DraftKings. Ralph, let's talk about this matchup. You and I did some March Madness videos talking about how to beat a team 3 times and how hard it is. Do you think the bookmakers are building that into this number?
Well, Kel, and please do go check out on my homepage the free conference tournament conference tournament guide from WagerTalk. Absolutely free, and there's 6 full pages of trends and angles. So, Kel, you asked me how hard is it to beat a team a 3rd time? Well, a team that lost the first 2 times of the season only wins 29.5% straight up, but they cover 51.1%. If the team that lost both games is a favorite or 3 or more, like you're talking about, Kelly, they have covered 63% against the spread. And as a dog or a small favorite, they're 50.1%. So, in this situation, I am not concerned about how a team did. If I have the team that lost twice and they are now a favorite, I think it's a positive. Arkansas State, they took care of Marshall. It wasn't a great game for them on Saturday. They win 77-74. And now you look at a team in South Alabama that has actually rested. They were the higher seat in the Sun Belt. South Alabama, the number 3 seed, but them, Troy and James Madison were all tied at 13-5. By the way, in conference play, Arkansas State also had a 13-5 record. So those top 4 teams all tied with this. But again, with the seeding, you got the extra bye. I do like Arkansas State in this situation. To me, having the defense they have makes the difference in this game. They have an elite defense. Effective field goal percentage, they are number 10. They do not turn the ball over on offense. They are faster paced, which would hurt, which would concern me a little bit if you're playing a 3rd or 4th straight game. But in this situation, only playing against Marshall last time against a very slow-paced South Alabama, I do lean the Red Wolves.
All right. Clint's got his answer. If you have a question for Ralph or, of course, Steve Merrill, who will be up next, please drop it in the chat because that's why we're here, guys. I had too many margaritas last night, so don't make me sit here without questions in the chat. I don't know how to read that. D3G3N wants to talk about Bradley Drake. Oh, Ralph, we got to dig deep for this one. Guys, if you get a chance, give us some rotation numbers so it's easier for me to look this up. 805, 806. Bradley Drake. Drake is open as a 2-point favorite, up to 4 at quite a few shops outside of FanDuel and DraftKings here, Ralph. Look, I don't know a lot about the Missouri Valley. I used to kind of follow it back when I lived in Kansas. These days, not so much.
Color me Drake. Drake's going to win this, no question. 29-3 this year. And just so you guys think, the Missouri Valley Conference, when I look at the Missouri Valley Conference in relative to the other conferences, this conference to me is almost as good as the ACC. If you took out the top 2 teams in the ACC this year, they have so many bottom feeders. The worst team is Missouri State. They're not good. But when you have Drake and Bradley and Northern Iowa and Belmont, yeah, they're not ACC teams, but they're quality teams that beat each other up. I look at Drake and they lost to Illinois, Chicago, and Murray State back the beginning of January. Since that time, they've lost 1 game. They are 17-1. That loss at home to Bradley. Revenge gets overused, guys. But when you have 2 home losses on the season, and in your last 15 games, you have 1 complete loss, and it was to this team at home against Bradley, that's a situation I'm going to look to play. Both teams, slow tempo. I told you this was a game that I already played the under on. I believe the total was 118. Well, when you have a team that's number 364 in tempo and another team that's 371, you expect that. Bradley is an elite 3-point shooting team. They are number 1 in the country, Kelly, averaging over 40% in 3 points. That's unheard of. But now in the neutral setting, yes, they played 2 games. Let me check. I did not check what they did against Valpo last night. They're number 1 shooting, but against Valpo last night at the Enterprise Center, they were 10 of 26 for 38%, a little under what they average in the season. But you look at Drake. Drake is number 81 in the country in 3-point defense. And when I look at Drake, they're number 1 on defense forcing turnovers. They're number 3 in Missouri Valley Conference. Good 3-point defense against a team that needs to make threes to win. Drake with home loss revenge. I am on Drake today.
All right, guys, let's get to some more of these questions. Nick, Michigan State, Michigan, total over 147. I believe VR said they bet that one last night. Let's look at this total because it has only been going one way. And I think, as VR mentioned, they were trying to get out ahead of it from 146 up to 148 and a half at the Westgate Superbook, as well as DraftKings. Yeah, I don't know, Ralph, when a total's moved 2 points, 2.5 points, at that point in time, it's just like, we got to sit back and say, okay, we missed the number here, right?
I'm going to say, the number got better. So, this is one where I'm against the line move. And I'm not afraid to go against the line move, guys. Even if the line moves right 55% of the time, that means it's wrong 45% of the time. So if you're on a good run and you think a line moved, we know there's fake line moves. We know there's sharp line moves. But that's not going to talk me out of a play, especially if the line got 2 points better. Listen, you've got 2 defenses here. The Michigan State defense is elite. I mean, Izzo has them playing to where they were in the normal phrase. But this Michigan defense, to me, is just as good. Now, Michigan's a fast-paced team, but on the road, they're much slower. They also played their last 3 games at home. So their last road game, let's remember, this Michigan team scored 49 points in a 49-46 win at the Cornhuskers back on February 24th. Now, we saw Michigan State come away with a 91-84 win against Iowa. Iowa, one of the fastest tempo teams. So I think if you look at the current results, you see that the results tend to lean with the over. But this is still a Michigan State rivalry. The first score, Kelly, of this season, 75-62. So that was only 137. I think this line is crazy high. And while I did not use the under originally this morning, I might look at it a little closer and see how high this total actually goes. Under for me. Yeah,
we got about 30 minutes until this game tips off, Ralph. I wouldn't be shocked to see at this rate. 148.5, 149 maybe even. So keep an eye out. That's why we use the odds screen, guys, whether it's the Odds Logic professional screen or the free WagerTalk.com screen that has a slight delay. You guys can go over there, WagerTalk.com /odds and look. If you are confused as to what we are talking about, Robert Whitcomb wants to know Oregon, Washington. Any thoughts? Currently 7.5, even juiced to the Ducks. Here, Ralph, 146.5 is the total.
You know, Oregon's a unique team. I mean, it's hard to imagine they lost 5 in a row from the end of January to the beginning of February. And we're talking losing to Minnesota, UCLA, Nebraska. Losses at Michigan and Michigan State aren't bad. Remember, these are the first time these Pac-12 teams have gone to an arena. So, hey, if you're Cal or Stanford having to go to Duke, that's an intimidating scene. If you're Oregon having to play at Michigan and Michigan State, those are intimidating scenes. But they had a favorable schedule down the stretch. So is Oregon for real with their 5 straight wins? Or is it because 4 of the 6 games were at home and the 2 road games were at Iowa at the bottom of the conference and an overtime win against Wisconsin? But I just cannot get to the Washington side. You know, when you come in after they beat Merril and they were 10-4 back at the beginning of January, they are now 13-17. So they are 3-13 their last 3 games. The road games against Minnesota, Northwestern, and Penn State, all teams at the bottom of the conference. Yeah, they were rivals. Yes, they still are rivals. Yes, this is the final senior home game. Not enough for me to get on the Husky side. Slight lean, nowhere near a play for me, but the only way I would go is Duckville.
All right, Ralph, we got to get Steve Merrill in here. So that means I got to let you go, but I always appreciate your time here on Sundays. Please give yourself a little self-promotion before we get you out of here. I know you and I did some conference championship videos that should be up on the Wager Talk Instagram, TikTok, as well as the YouTube Shorts. And then you and I will be getting back together on Wednesday this following week to go through some trends and angles for March Madness.
Absolutely. I tell you what, I can't have VR do better than me. So I'm going to give you my top college basketball play for today as well. It's game number 800, William and Mary. They're laying 3.5 to Delaware. Delaware started the season 14-9 and off back-to-back wins as conference tournaments. They're now playing a 3rd straight day. William and Mary comes in as the number 4 seed, but they lost 3 in a row. I'm not too concerned because 2 of those losses were the top 2 teams in the Colonial Athletic Conference. When I go to the database, Kel, and this is in the free conference tournament guide, when a team is off back-to-back losses with 3+ days rest or more against a team off back-to-back wins with 2 days of rest or less, those teams 61-22, 63.5%. William Mary also lost both meetings to this team, and when we have a team that's a favorite that lost both meetings, they are 60% against the spread. The Tribe, number 3 in offensive tempo against a tired team playing a 3rd straight game. I'll tell you what, Kel, this play would have been a lot stronger. My college basketball has been pretty uneven lately. Had I been on a good run, this would have been in the mix to be a 5% release. Steve Merrill will be happy that I am on the William Mary Tribe. We'll see if he agrees with me in a minute.
I was just getting ready to say this is the perfect transition to bring in Steve Merrill. Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV. Make sure you guys give him a follow. We will have up some more March Madness content on X, TikTok, Instagram. TikTok loves them some Ralph. If you guys have not went over to the Wager Talk TikTok, that sounds weird. Very weird to say. Anyway, go over there. Tons of video content for all of your scrolling pleasure. Steve Merrill, welcome in. We've got about 26 minutes to tip off. But we don't have that much to talk about. I mean, we kind of went over the college basketball slate.
We've got a lot to talk about. My goodness. I mean, God, it makes my day.
All right, let's
so
hear it.
Excited to hear that. I don't have to go watch the game now. I don't have to watch the game now because they're not on CBS Sports Network national TV until tomorrow. The semis and the finals on Tuesday. They're on Flow Sports, which I don't subscribe to. I don't believe in this paid internet, low-level college basketball. So I was going to go to Anna's Brick Oven for all-you-can-eat pizza and wings for $20 for the watch party. I'm debating if I should do that, Kelly, at 2:30 Eastern here.
How does anybody make money? I need to know how Anna's makes money giving all-you-can-eat pizza and wings. That's like almost impossible.
They might make money on me nowadays. I don't eat as much at one sitting. I eat a lot throughout the day, but I can't binge like I used to, nor do I want to. So I'm debating on that one, but I'm going to watch it nonetheless, one way or the other. Yeah, look, it's a good setup for William and Mary, as Ralph said. They got the 4 seed. They stumbled into the 4 seed, 3 straight losses, but Campbell, the 5 seed, lost 3 straight, and then Campbell got upset by Delaware yesterday by 17. So it's a great spot for William and Mary. Let's hope it works out. Initially, last night, DraftKings opened 3.5 before anybody else, and it went down to 2.5. I was like, that's strange, and now it's 4. So I think the sharp money is on William and Mary. I think Ralph is on them. One thing I will point out, they only played once in the regular season, and they did lose at Delaware in that meeting. But check this out. Delaware finished 1-11 straight up in the regular season. 1-11 straight up, and that one win was against William and Mary on February 8th. They're off back-to-back wins here off a terrible Stony Brook team, and then they beat Campbell, who's been without one of their best players and just stumbled, as I mentioned. So really good setup for William and Mary today. Let's hope it works out. Also, Delaware plays extremely fast, one of the weakest defenses in the conference, and that's William and Mary's weakness. They play fast. They don't play great D. So it's a good matchup. And the winner gets the 1 seed Towson or Drexel tomorrow. And looky here, Drexel is only a 4-point dog against the 1 seed Towson. So William and Mary is going to avoid Wilmington and Charleston, who will play in the other semi-likely tomorrow night. So, yeah, look, I'm optimistic they can get a win today, maybe get a win tomorrow and get to the finals. And then I got the really tough decision, Kelly Stewart. Do I drive up to D.C. on Tuesday night to watch them try to make the NCAA for the first time since the 1930s? They're one of 4 teams that have never made the tournament since it began in the 30s. A badge of shame.
Wow.
That might not end this season, but they're on the right track. Yeah. Hey, this is a great trivia question. I won't give the answer right now. Let the live chat figure it out. Who are the other teams that have never made since the tournament began in the 1930s? William and Mary is one of them. There's only 2 or 3 others, and I will give you the answer in a moment. And Northwestern was one of them up till a couple years ago, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's right.
Northwestern's made it a few times. Yeah.
All right, let's get to some questions in the chat while we figure out if anybody's smart enough to know those trivia questions, because I sure as hell don't. Andrew wants to know your thought. Yeah, they're going to use the internet. Of course, that's all we have to do anymore. Now I just go on Grok, on X, and I'm just like, here's my answer. I don't need an encyclopedia anymore. All right, thoughts on the over Omaha St. Thomas, guys. Drop in the rotation numbers if you can. 823. All right, right now, currently, it's gotten bet down. 152.5 at open now. 149, one at BetWar, which is one of the sharper books I like to use on my odds logic screen. But there's 150.5 at DraftKings. This one's all over the board, Steve Merrill. Can you make this total make sense?
Yeah, conference tournaments are always a little tricky because, I talk about this with the NCAAs and also with the NBA playoffs especially, that the NBA playoff games on average are a few points lower scoring because you get defensive intensity. On the surface, this should be a very high-scoring game, but you also factor in the no-rest situation. So a lot of, intricacies. I think in general, no rest means teams don't want to play as fast, but I think it also can hurt your shooting legs, tired legs, less threes, but it can also slow you down on defense. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Tempo-wise, these teams are pretty modest, both middle of the pack. They both give up a lot of three-point shots on the season, and these are 2 of the better three-point shooting teams in the nation. So once again, it's going to come down to three-point shooting with, as you know, Kelly, it's such a random variable, especially in a no-rest situation. But if they're hitting the threes, this game probably gets up and over.
All right. If you guys have a question for Steve Merrill, whether it's college basketball or NBA, we'll get it answered. Luis wants to know, do you like the under in San Antonio, Minnesota? Let me go up to the NBA. San Antonio is 11.5 at some of the sharper books like Superbook and Circa. 233, 234 even at the total. This one's getting bet up as far as the total goes a lot. Maybe that's why Louise is coming in saying, I'm going to be a contrarian and bet the under.
Yeah, and of course, we always check the injury reports. And even in the NBA nowadays, the injury reports don't mean a lot, but a lot of these lines move because of it. Looks like Minnesota's is pretty clean. Rudy Gobert is questionable. Of course, Randall and him have been injured in the recent weeks. Wembanyama out for the Spurs, and that's been the big injury news of the season, really, because he was going to be the Defensive Player of the Year. In fact, I think he was as high as minus 2,500 to be Defensive Player of the Year before he got injured after the All-Star break and ruled out. You have to have a 65 game minimum, so he cannot win it now. And while he's a great offensive player, I think they've been even weaker on defense, and we have seen some overs start to show. In fact, San Antonio's gone over 4 straight, and keep in mind, This is a team that had gone under 6 straight before that. So they're playing fast. They're not playing great defense. 3 of those last 4 overs, they've given up 51% shooting or worse. Minnesota usually is a good defensive team, but when they can play a game which they get more up-tempo, they're not going to turn down that opportunity, especially after playing the Heat in their most recent game. So, yeah, I think there's some reasons to like the over in this one tonight on Sunday.
All right, let's get into this chat. Couple more questions before we get out of here, Steve Merrill. We got about 20 minutes to tip off. Titan CT wants to know 796 is the rotation number. He wants to talk about UTSA Charlotte here. Last game of the regular season for these two before they head to their conference championships. 1.5 pretty much across the board. For Charlotte, 148.5 is the total.
Yeah, man, we are digging deep. It is kind of a little bit of an ugly card today in college hoops. By the way, Kelly, it's the last regular season day of the college basketball season. That's kind of scary when you say it that way because we have a lot of college hoops left, but it's the last regular season day of the regular season. The last regular season day. The tournaments, of course, start for the big boys this week. This is a Charlotte team that's in terrible current form. They're 3-14 in the conference, and they lost their only win recently was an overtime win against Temple. So on the road, bad team, not in a hurry to back them. It would be UTSA or pass for me. Actually, I'm sorry, Charlotte at home in this game, but I'm not looking to back them. UTSA or pass for me either way. I'm just not looking to back bad teams at this point in the college basketball season.
UTSA opened up as the favorite. Sometimes I notice that. Usually that line move is always an interesting flip here. Not going to be getting involved in that game, but Steve Merrill, give me a couple of games in the NBA. Mac Hudson wants to know what some of your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm actually passing the NBA. I did do my college basketball video for 3 early games. We can talk about those real quick in a moment. NBA tricky this time of the year. It's the lull before the playoffs, so you got to tread lightly. Teams have been very bipolar recently, more so than normal. So I'm treading lightly today in the NBA, not taking a look at these. The OKC-Denver game tips off in about an hour and a half, is obviously the spotlight game. And it's a huge total, 243.5. And I talk about how defensive intensity shows up in the NBA playoffs and somewhat in, Class A games. I know OKC can score, but they're also one of the best defensive teams in the league. So I thought that total looked a little high, and it's even gone higher from the opener. I'm usually looking to play the biggest totals over, so that's why I stayed away from it. But under 243, if you're looking for a little action in that early game, is probably the way I would lean in the Denver OKC game at 1 Eastern.
All right, Steve, let's go over the 3 games that you did in your video. I'm kind of curious to see who you were on. I did take 5.5 with the Minnesota Gophers here in about an hour and 17 minutes. It tipped off. That is the only thing I bet today. So outside of that, like you said, light card. I don't bet the NBA this time of year. I usually wait until mid-April during the playoffs. That's when I really like to get involved. So it's going to be a light day here. But I'm curious to hear of your other 3. I do have a few other teams on my list. And like I tell everybody on the show, bring your list. And if there's something you agree with, something you hear about, I did add William and Mary from both you and Ralph. So we'll see kind of how this day shakes out.
Yeah, so I'm with you on the Gophers. Gophers, we should kill all the Gophers, part of me said, but we don't have to kill all the Gophers. They're going to lock us up and throw. Hey, what movie was that, folks? Put the quotes in the live chat. Caddyshack is the answer. I'm not going to even wait.
Caddyshack's the answer. At least I knew that one. But what are the other 2 teams that have never made the NCAA tournament?
All right, so this is a little bit of a technicality. I wasn't sure if it was 3 or 4, so I had to Google it as well because one of them has transitioned out of Division I basketball. It was one of the St. Francis schools, either PA or New York. I think it was St. Francis, New York. They've transitioned like to Division II or something, so they're not going to make it. They were one of them. Northwestern was one of the other 4. They made it in 2017. So there are 3 remaining, just 3, since the tournament began in like the late 30s, early 40s. And there's actually an asterisk next to one of them, which I'll explain. It's a great trivia question. The 3 that have never made it, Army, Citadel, and William & Mary. Here's the thing, though. Army qualified for the tournament in the 1960s when Bobby Knight was the coach. Krzyzewski might have been the assistant or playing. I'd have to look that up. They turned it down to go to the NIT because back then the NIT was more prestigious. So Army, Citadel, and William & Mary have never played in the tournament, but Army did qualify. So there's really only 2 teams that have never qualified, and my beloved Tribe is one of them. And Citadel probably ain't doing it no time soon, but it's an incredible trivia question you can win some bar bets with. Now, real quick, there's like 20 or 30 teams that have never made the tournament, but these are the originals since the tournament began in like the late 30s.
All right, let's get into some of those games that you are on today. I was looking in the chat for some questions. Guys, get in your last-minute questions because I'm getting out of here in a few minutes. Steve, Merrill, give me a couple little teaser plays for today that you looked and or we can take Steve's question. VMI and Wofford. Wofford, I know that VR played yesterday. This Wofford team I knew nothing about, so we got to dig deep here on the odds screen. Let's see. Now you guys are making me search since I don't have a rotation number. 809, 810. Open 9, now 9.5. 138.5, pretty much across the board. There's a couple 138s at some of the sharper shops. Tell me about the Southern Conference here, Steve, because it's not a conference I follow. I do enjoy watching some of these teams get into the big dance, obviously for upset purposes. But during the regular season, they're just really hard to follow, 300-plus teams.
Yeah, I don't dig too deep into it either. Like, we've talked about this before. Like, you kind of have to narrow which conferences you're going to follow. You can't follow 364 teams and really go deep. So I don't follow the Southern, but I do dive in more during conference tournament. The one thing that jumped out to me about this game, this kind of puts into perspective these lower-tier conferences, how random they can be. Wofford lost to VMI at home back in January by 7, and then on the road in February, they beat them by 39. So it's just totally bipolar backwards. Wofford's second game in 2 nights without rest, but it's VMI's third in 3 nights without rest. VMI does play up-tempo. Wofford is a slow-down half-court team. I always like to play these slow-down half-court teams in tournament action, whether it's the conference tournaments and the NCAAs, especially at a no-rest spot, because normally it's tougher for the opponent in the half-court to match up, and VMI doesn't prefer to play that way. VMI is also a terrible three-point shooting team, so I would lean Wofford in this one. And Kelly, I'll quickly touch on those other games I did on the early start for my video. I did lean Minnesota. Didn't really like that game much, but Rutgers is in really bad current form. It's their last home game, but their top 3 players are freshmen. So I don't think it means much. There really is no senior night there. And I'll lean Minnesota +5, another slow-down half-court defensive team. I think the better defensive team getting points. And here's how bipolar Rutgers has been. Iowa, another game I talked about in my video, Iowa and Nebraska at 12:30 Eastern on Fox National TV. Iowa's in a tailspin. They have only covered once in their last 14 games. And that one cover was an outright road dog win against Rutgers. So another reason I don't trust Rutgers is they allowed Iowa to get their only cover in 14 games. I'd lean Nebraska, but at 6.5, I feel like the odds makers are pricing in the fact that Iowa's a money burner. I actually like the over 155.5. This one hasn't moved much, and I think there's some value. It should be a fast-paced game, and Iowa's defense is just horrendous right now. Nebraska's has been dicey. And then we'll finish it off with the first game. It starts in 12 minutes. I heard you and Ralph talking about Michigan State. I used the under in my video as a free play, under 147 last night when I recorded. It's now 148.5, and I was happy to hear Ralph said he disagreed with the money move as well. So, yeah, let's take the extra line value. Sparty, a great half-court defense. They are a terrible three-point shooting team, but they're the 4th best three-point defense in the nation, and Michigan takes a lot of threes. So I like the under 148.5. I don't agree with that money move to the higher number.
Ooh, that one tips off here in about 12 minutes. Steve Merrill.
On ESPN.
Yeah, speaking of 12 minutes,
I'm sorry. CBS. My bad. I keep saying that. I hate giving ESPN plug, and I just did it for no reason. CBS, folks. And then on Fox. And then on Big Ten Network for the Minnesota game. We don't even need to turn on the evil network. That's what the E stands for.
Evil.
Evil Sports Programming Network.
That is so funny. All right, Steve Merrill, leave our audience with a little self-promotion. Let them know where they can find your stuff. You and I also did some March Madness videos, so they will be up on the WagerTalk YouTube channel as well as all the social media outlets. Always great information from Steve when it comes to betting. And then I got to see how pissed off you're going to make TikTok with your Blue Bloods video. 3 Blue Bloods.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, I know, and I recorded it last week. I might have to update it because I talked about kind of the the efficiency rankings and stuff. But 3 Blue Bloods that have won almost half of the national championships in the last couple of decades, and none of them are going to win it this year. Stay tuned, and I'll give you that information. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Light you on fire. They are going to lose their minds.
I tried to bring controversy with the Redskins stuff, and it didn't work. I've got a Tribe Indians hat right behind me. That green hat there's from the 80s. It's a mesh hat that says Indians. I try, man. I try my best. I'm like the only person trying to get controversial and get canceled, and I can't even get any traction with it, but I keep trying.
Well, that's because you are trying. If you just don't try, exactly. It might actually happen. All jokes aside, you have the floor.
God, it can only get canceled once. It only has to happen once, right? No, it's seriously, let's go to WagerTalk.com and check out a nice Sunday best bet in college hoops. It's not a game we talked about. It's on the nighttime card in conference tournament action. Love this time of the year. Some great money-making opportunities. But let's not forget, baseball is around the corner. I won over 100 units in baseball alone last year. My All Sports clients had already doubled their bankroll by August in 2024. We finished up 133 units. Right now, you can get an All Sports one-year all-access for about $1 a play and save $811 instantly with promo code SM365. Full details are on my page right now, Steve Merrill, WagerTalk.com. Get there quicker. Shortcut WT.buzz/SM. And don't forget, you can try Odds Logic for free for 7 days with oddslogic.com/SM. Free 7-day trial. You see it on the screen there. Real-time odds, not delayed for 5 minutes. You can get them for real-time injury updates and real-time scores, which are so important now if you're doing in-game betting, halftime betting. Hey, it's what the sports books use as well behind the counter. Put that power on your side and try it for free for 7 days. oddslogic.com/SM.
Great stuff from VR, Ralph, and of course, Steve Merrill. Thank you guys for hanging out with us here on this early Sunday morning, thanks to daylight savings time. We'll be back here next week, same time, same place, go over the college basketball slate, getting you guys ready for March Madness. We're going to have a complete March Madness live show on Sunday for Selection Sunday. It's going to be awesome. We'll see you guys there.